I also took the initiative and went to the New Mexico Supreme Court. And the reasoning behind that is, in a situation like this, where this matter is only a state issue because it came about through violations of state and local election laws, then the New Mexico Supreme Court would be the court of original jurisdiction. And jurisdiction, for those of you who are not clear on what that really means, is simply whether or not the court has the authority to hear the case. Now, federal courts are courts of limited jurisdiction. They're created by Congress under statute. So in order to fully invoke and incur their jurisdiction, you have to cite a violation of some federal statute. The defendants alleged that I had cited violations under the Constitution under Article 3, which is not correct. I did invoke jurisdiction in the state court under Article 3 because Article 3 governs the entire nation, since it's the supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the United States of America. However, every charge that I allege in my complaint pertained to violations of state and local election laws and related laws there too. When the case went to the federal court, if it had been looked at in a fair and just manner, the judge would have said immediately, we don't have jurisdiction here and there's no compelling interest for us to keep this case, send it back to state court. They didn't do so. And I believe they didn't do so because they were aware of the political ramifications of this case. And I cannot necessarily prove that a conspiracy took place, but I honestly believe that it did. So my remedy at that point was to go to the court, the state court of last resort, which in this case was the New Mexico Supreme Court. And I asked them to issue a writ of prohibition to stop the federal court from holding on to my case and to have the defendants remove their removal, which was based in fraud. The New Mexico Supreme Court is a joke. They made a decision whereby they just denied my writ. They gave me absolutely no facts or conclusions of law to support their decision. They did not even send it to me. The only reason I knew the decision had been issued was because the federal court, to whom I had copied that I had filed this, sent me a copy of the New Mexico Supreme Court's decision. I subsequently spoke with the clerks and sort of trimmed them down a little bit about it, and eventually did get a certified copy so that I could put together another action, which is going to the United States Supreme Court to see if I can get them to come back on the New Mexico Supreme Court for what they did. They abdicated their responsibility because they have superintending power in a case of original jurisdiction. They fail their duties. In my book, every one of them are acting in sedition and insurrection to the Constitution and in treason against the people. They are not upholding the law. And remember, folks, this is supposed to be a constitutional republic, so it's supposed to be the rule of law that governs our nation, not the rule of men. And judges are taking it upon themselves to be the law. And judges are not empowered to make law. We have one body in this country. That's the legislature that can make law, and it's the same in the states. Judges are, if you will, administrators of the courts. Their duty is to see that the courts are run responsibly and fairly and objectively, and they cannot demonstrate bias. And I believe a bias was exhibited in my case. Ultimately, months went by. I filed more motions, tried to get the court to do something. Nothing happened. And then in March, we had to be out of state for a good month, so I filed a notice of unavailability with the court after having filed a query saying, what's going on? And on the second day of the time period that we were going to be out of state, the court issued an order on the 9th of March in which it said that it had jurisdiction. And the way it assumed jurisdiction was to predicate an additional fraud. What the judge did was say that on his beliefs and suppositions and interpretations, that even though I didn't state a claim that is a federal claim, basically under Title 42 or any of the other federal statutes that I could have cited, he decided that because I had cited issues which ended up in violations or deprivations of my rights guaranteed in both constitutions, that he was going to assume they were claims made under Title 42 and therefore concur with the defendants. And what he did essentially was accommodate them. So he basically assumed jurisdiction upon a fraud that was perpetrated upon the court by and through the defendants and their attorneys. I filed an objection to that, and shortly thereafter I received another order from the judge stating that he was going to dismiss some of the defendants. And those defendants were the New Mexico Municipal League, the New Mexico Self-Insurance Fund, and the two gentlemen that work for them. And his attitude was that because I had made, or he was alleging I had made a Title 42 claim, and these folks don't work for the states, or they're not state actors, which is a technical term that falls under 42, that I had no cause of action against them, no, basically a stated claim, and he dismissed them. So essentially their dismissal was predicated upon a false assumption of jurisdiction.
And we can pick this up in the next
And
segment,
we will-
folks. We'll get into it a little more in
I don't know how
depth
close
next
we are
segment.
to the end, but I will bring it up to date and finish the rest of it because it's important that you understand just exactly what happened.